catch up on a few things. Let me pray. Father, thanks for a new day. Thanks that you provide everything we need. Sometimes there's things we think we need, like electricity, that may not always be the case, but thank you for providing life, and thank you for your constant love for us. And I pray, even as we talk now, that we would be reminded that we are your sons and daughters, and just the amazing reality of being your children, no matter what's going on in our churches or our families or at work or with the electricity, that, we are your children, and you love us, and we've got an amazing future to look forward to. So pray that this time would be helpful, encouraging. Pray that each person on the call would just see clearly some good next steps that can help them be more fruitful as they disciple, as they live on mission to those around them. So lead us, lead our thoughts, lead our questions, lead this time for your glory. We love you and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Good to see you, Douglas. So last time we talked about having intentional conversations. That was such an important piece, connecting it, because we've been talking for months about eating meals and throwing parties and going to the park and playing rugby and all that stuff with people. But if we're not intentional in our conversation, it's usually not going to be fruitful relationship. So wanted to hear things you've been thinking about this past month with all of that. So any stories, any feedback? Where are you at with everything?
Everyone's quiet. I just to say that I found that really helpful, Todd. A few weeks back, probably just over a month ago, 5 weeks ago, I was asked to do a funeral from someone I didn't know. And then 2 weeks later, his grandson asked me to marry him and his girlfriend. And I was sort of part of the family, but none of them are Christian. But I just spent most of the Saturday with them and just asking questions, getting to know them on a deeper level. And we had some really great conversations, because as I ask, that in turn I found starts to get them to ask questions about what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
And so really great conversation. So that was helpful.
Cool.
On the other hand, I find it with the students that we work with, I ask questions and it's 1 or 2 word answers sometimes. And eventually I run out of, well, what next? And so that part I find tricky. You'll know how to keep asking questions. That's not always easy.
Love that. So good point there. Let me say a couple things about that quick. When you get into this posture of pursuing people's stories in this way, by again asking good questions, you'll get better at it. Like anything, you practice asking good questions, you'll get better at asking questions. And you'll think of more questions, and you'll think of different ways to ask questions, and it'll become easier as you do it and as your people do it. So, but yeah, there will be certain people, introverted people, or I don't know, more broken people that give you short answers to your questions. I don't know if you've heard me tell the story. One of my non-Christian neighbor friends this guy uh, loved, he had a couple of loves, okay, basketball and fishing. And so those are two things that I tried to do with him to build relationship, basketball and fishing. I love the basketball side of it because it's my favorite sport, but the fishing side of it was a lot of work. Not much of a fisherman, okay? So that was definitely for me to love him well, to go fishing with him was sacrifice. Okay. But this guy, great guy, but a quiet guy. And I knew that if I was going to be with him for like 1.5 to 2 hours, I was going to need to ask him probably like 30 to 40 questions. Because I knew that many of those questions I was going to get maybe 1 or 2 sentences. So I just needed to prepare myself when I was going to be with him to be ready to ask a lot of questions. So even that, Paul, going into relationships saying, going to this wedding or going to this party or going to the park, it may require more than 2 or 3 questions. I may need to be ready with 8 to 10 questions, or you know what I mean. And one time I even tested this out. He and I were driving to go fishing, and so I got into his car and I was like, I'm gonna sit here silent and see if he asks me anything. I'm gonna sit here silent and see if he says anything about anything. And so I just sat there, nothing. He was totally content with driving for many minutes with silence. And so it was just such an interesting test. And so about 10 minutes, I mean, we said hello and, the first introductions, but then I sat there for a good 10 minutes and nothing from him. And he was totally fine with that. I wasn't. He was fine with it. And so finally, after 10 minutes, it was like, okay, I proved my point. If I don't initiate, if I don't ask, like we could sit here probably for 30 minutes, until we get to the destination. So anyway, at the 10-minute mark, I broke the silence and started a series of questions. And so anyway, but again, that's one of those things we train our people. We bring awareness to our people. Say you're going to work today, go to work with that expectation. At coffee break, at lunch break, go with that expectation, 3 to 5 questions. You're going out with friends after work, or you're Christo, you're hanging out with these students after class, or whatever the context. Helping our people enter into these situations with the expectation they're going to need to ask probably quite a few good questions. So I think another thing happens though too, Paul, that as we get down the road in relationship with people, that it just becomes easier too. They get more comfortable with being asked questions. They get more comfortable with asking questions back to us because now they know part of our story. Those new people you were just at the wedding with, they didn't know you at all. They didn't know you. They didn't trust you for the most. They trusted you enough to ask you to help, but you know what I mean. So, but as we build some trust and as the relationships do deepen with lost people, it all becomes easier. I think I told you guys we're going through the story of God right now. My gospel community is going through the story of God with 3 non-Christian families. And so we're doing it every other Sunday evening. We're doing a part of it every other Sunday evening. So we did the 3rd part just two nights ago. Okay. But interesting. My wife even said afterwards, she was like, you could see there's a different comfort level now with these non-Christians. There's a different comfort level. They felt more comfortable being in our home. They felt more comfortable being asked questions, more comfortable asking us questions, just more comfortable with the whole thing. And so it was really cool too. One of the non-Christian single moms, she had a lot of as we were going through the story of God, we were talking about some stories from the end of the Old Testament, moving into the New Testament and the birth of Jesus, and just very insightful comments from this non-Christian single mom. But I loved that she felt comfortable enough to share those insights. And it wasn't just like one or two. She actually, I don't even, like 5 or 6 different times, she felt comfortable enough to comment. And every comment, like I said, was very insightful, like very good. Things she recognized from the story, things she recognized as Jesus was introduced into the story. And so for me, it was really easy just to encourage her and all that. Say, Michelle, love that. Love what you just said. How do you think that feels for her? You know what I mean? So she's going out, she's taking a risk a bit to share an idea about a big topic, Jesus in the Bible. So she's putting herself out there. And then it gives me the opportunity just to encourage her and support her in that. Like, man, Michelle, great thought, great insight, great observation. Love that. So it's just, encouraging for her. One more aspect, one more way to encourage her. So somebody else could be related with that, could be related with, things we talked about previously, 30-day plan, clarifying mission, any of that, I'd love to hear.
Just on what we're busy talking, something probably stupid, but that I found was that to come up with good questions, I have to put myself in their shoes or in their circumstances. And for me, that's when the magic happens inside of me anyway.
Good.
That you understand them better. It's like a realization of what they must be going through. And I think to not ask good questions, I've found, is for me just lazy communication. You just
good
assumptions and a lot of assuming that somewhere this friendship is just going to happen or this relationship is just going to grow. But for me, the good stuff happens in me when I put myself in their shoes to come up with good questions.
Good, love it. So, Doug, when you're saying that, so you use the phrase "putting yourself in their shoes." I love that thought. What's really good, you said there's important things happening in you. That's happening because putting yourself in their shoes is really a demonstration of love. So let's name it what it is. And that's a very powerful thing. For you to give that kind of thought, for you to give that kind of intentionality to this person, to put yourself in their shoes, like that's a big deal. For you to do that, there's something going on at a heart level that says, I'm going to love this person enough in this moment to not be lazy, like you said, to not be superficial. I'm going to love this person enough in this moment to be thoughtful, to be careful, to be sensitive in what I ask them. So yeah, it's something powerful going on inside us. So Paul at the wedding, this isn't just some technical exercise we're engaging in. It's an act of love. It's the act of loving. So there's a lot of powerful stuff going on in us at a heart level because we're engaging in the act of love towards this person. So Paul at that wedding with this family asking these questions like you were loving them well. You weren't just asking them questions. You were loving them well by asking them questions. And then being intentional by asking more questions and the next questions. And when you ran out of questions, it was all that the experience was your heart being activated to love and you expressing love through how you engage them. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Doug. So again, I love hearing you guys talk about this for yourself personally. Obviously, our big work is to say, how do we create a culture of this in our churches? Because imagine what could happen if a whole small group was living like this. Imagine what could happen if half of your small groups were engaging like this throughout the week in their neighborhoods. Imagine if half of the people in your church were going to work every day, engaging their coworkers. Christo, imagine if half of your student ministry was going to class, hanging out after class like this. You can imagine the ripple, you can imagine the exponential, the multiplication implications. So that's part of what we have to think about is, okay, I'm getting this more and more personally. Me and my wife are getting this more and more personally. My small group is getting this more and more. But how do we keep that going out so that a higher percentage of our groups, a higher percentage of our people are increasingly living like this in their daily lives? Again, after class, they go out for a Coke or a coffee with a classmate or a coworker, neighbor. That's what we've got to see our people grow into, is that this is not an occasional thing that happens, but a regular thing that happens. So thoughts, comments? What do you think it's going to take to make progress in what I just said? What's it going to require of you and the leaders of your churches?
Todd, I think that's actually the critical question. I mean, obviously modeling it.
Good.
So
Good.
learning it ourselves, but then I'm also realizing that so people that also don't learn things by osmosis. So we've got to build a core of people who are serious enough to be challenged to do this. So exactly like you've been doing with us, to take this and roll that through to the core.
Good.
So that they're continuing. And I think that's the point of intentional discipleship, is
Good.
not just trying to be something and hoping somebody catches it, but actually teaching and challenging people on it.
Good. So yeah, modeling it is very critical. Again, any conversation you're having with anybody in your church, like, it ought to be, this ought to be happening, asking them good questions. So the modeling, but I like what you said, Brian. Part of it is just bringing a constant awareness of it in front of our people. Because again, we've said this on previous calls, the opportunities are there. God has designed our lives in such a way that we're surrounded by lost people. They're in our neighborhoods, they're at our workplaces, they're at the park, they're at the grocery store, they're all around us all the time. So there's no shortage of opportunity. So bringing that awareness, hey everybody, hey church, God's designed life like mission is around us every day, all the time. How can we increasingly learn to be intentional in our conversations, which is going to help us grow deeper in our relationships with lost people, which we believe is going to result in increasing number of spiritual conversations, which then sets the stage for some of those people coming to know Jesus. So bringing that, keeping that awareness in front of our people constantly. Anything else? What are you guys thinking?
Just thinking aloud. I mean, with one's missional evenings, whatever you're having, you sort of put it to your core, the guys you're trying to train, that afterwards you're going to have a debrief, and one of the questions you're going to talk about is, how did the questions go? So you actually put it on the agenda.
Good.
And so, yeah, so that they're aware of it, that you're going to ask them about it after the night.
Good. Love it. What a great idea. So imagine Paul even asking, as you debrief with some of your leaders later on, you could even do this through email or text, say, how did your conversations with lost people go? What seemed to be some of the better questions you asked? What kinds of questions seem to unlock, some key parts of their story? So I love what you said, Paul. You even have the conversation about the conversations. You even have the conversation about the questions to say, man, I asked this question just about this guy's family and about his asking about their parents. And wow, found out that this very tragic thing happened 2 years ago with their family, to their parents. And we just got into a very powerful conversation about it. So for your leaders to hear that, again, it's just going to be, it's just going to be one more good piece in their understanding and their development. So it's a great thought there, Paul. Christo, any thoughts from the student world? I think Christo's electricity might have got shut off.
Just the ghost of.
Just one more thought, maybe. I'm just thinking, I guess I often think about these things almost internally within the church community. And I think about, so as with most churches, I struggle on a Sunday morning, as an example, is to just get people to stay and have conversation. But maybe this is actually a good framework to challenge people and also for them to learn about good questions. So, just get out there, grab a cup of coffee and think of one question you can ask them, just one. Yep. Start there. Yep. And get conversations going. And maybe that's a good way for us to embed that kind of culture with just a few key people as well.
Yep, good. Yep, good. I said this, I'm sure, at some point along the way, but part of the training, if you want to say, so going back to even what you said, Brian, with modeling and teaching about this, but the experiential side of it is so key. And so if people are going to do this externally outside the church with non-Christians, they're going to get good at it. They're going to get good at it by doing it with each other internally inside the church.
Yeah.
So to your point, we've got to be encouraging that inside the church. And what I'm sure I said previously was the DNA context. If you were to say, like, what's the best environment for that to be developed in people? It's clearly the DNA environment. It's where you've got, your 3 or 4 women together, your 3 or 4 men together, and a lot of it is probing and pushing deeper into each other's stories. So if we're really taking DNA seriously, getting a high percentage of our people in healthy DNA relationships, the bonus effect of that is that they're learning to ask good questions with each other in their DNA, which then you can just say, hey, everybody, we seem to be growing and maturing in this inside our DNA. Just take it the next step at work tomorrow. Just take it, to your neighbor, in your neighborhood, at the park. So it's really no different. You're just loving. You're just loving these people by being intentional to pursue their story. They just happen to not know Jesus yet, that coworker, that neighbor, but they're still a human that has a story. They're an image bearer that has a story that God wants to redeem. So let's be a church of people that pursue stories, each other's stories as the family, as well as the stories of lost people that God wants to redeem. So, any other thoughts about that, or Thomas, you trying to talk? Muted. There you go.
No, I'm just saying suddenly there's light. Our power went on again.
Okay. Let there be light. Let there be light. Good. Well, hey, if you don't have anything for the past, do you have any thoughts about I sent you a document just with some real practical details about some organizational stuff, meals, kids, teenagers, all those things, proximity. Any thoughts, reflections about anything you saw in that document? A lot of really good practical stuff. My wife helped me write that, so these things came out of years of years of the ups and downs of leading a community in this way, and yeah, just important reminders to consider. Thoughts or questions about any of that?
I'm just finding it tricky, to be honest with you. The whole proximity idea. I mean, so we've connected with students, and so we have a little Sunday gathering here, and we fetch about 8 of them on a Sunday morning, but they live 22 k's away.
Okay.
One of the other guys who's fairly faithful lives about 25 kilometers away.
Okay.
A working guy, and then I have our domestic worker and our gardener. They joined us now on a Sunday as well. They live, I don't know, 15 kilometers away, and then a few local couples. So it's sort of been a little bit of a wrestle to how to figure out how to do this whole, because it's such a diverse bunch of people, such a diverse group, and there's no proximity at the moment. So yeah, so I'm finding myself a little bit stymied as to how to do missional community with this group of people. Thought you'd be welcome.
Yeah, anybody want to say anything to that? You know, what do you do when you've got people spread at a distance from each other? Anybody else? Something you've tried?
Maybe just I haven't got a solution for Paul. I've got more problems for you, Todd. But I think just looking down the list of considerations, I guess there's two things that we're struggling with. The one is shared leadership of the core, to really get people to, the people who are actually in the core, to really take it to heart and go, oh, actually this is a good idea and we should give ourselves to this. And then the flows out of that is really getting good rhythm going, where people are consistently, at least the core is consistently in. We also have a kind of a particular situation where a good chunk of our people are not around every weekend because they have family realities, they travel a lot or whatever it is.
Yep.
I mean, we should be able to plan around that, but it is just a practical thing we have to work with.
Yep. So yeah, the only answer to that last thing, Brian, is that's part of the 30-day planning, where there's certain weekends, you know, there's certain weekends we're protecting in our schedule. We've committed as a community to say these weekends we're available, we're doing these things. And then just encouraging the group to lock them in as much as possible. And again, special things are going to come up. Somebody's going to have a 25th wedding anniversary with their parents, or, you know, who knows. And so you've always got that, but to lock some things in and to lock them in as tight as possible is just going to guarantee more and more consistency. So I'm going to go backwards here. I'm going to do your first thing and then go back to Paul's thing. So Brian, with your other thing about shared leadership, I would just say part of that is, you know, with younger believers or less experienced believers, is giving them responsibility, even if they're not asking for it yet. Just like I do with my kids every day. Like they're not choosing or preferring to clean the bathroom. Okay. But I'm going to ask them, and if I have to, require them to clean the bathroom, because that's part of what it means to be part of our family. Okay. So you're going to need to do the same thing. So some of that usually looks like hosting. It's like, man, we want to do this. You know, we're gonna watch this rugby game, and we're gonna invite these 3 neighbor guys, you know, neighbor friends into it. Could you host that on Saturday night? Somebody who's never hosted before or isn't used to hosting, ask them and say, you know, you don't have to do it all. You know, we'll help bring some food and drinks, but could we do it at your place? And just that, helping people grow in hosting and hospitality and bringing food and cleaning up afterwards, and you know, being part of the inviting. So asking everybody all the time, like, who are you inviting? You know, Who are you inviting to the party? Who are you inviting to the meal? Who are you inviting to the park? But just giving them those consistent bits of responsibility and ownership for what the community is doing. So I don't know if that helps. And talking about it regularly.
Mm.
So the more we engage more people into those kinds of decision-making conversations, the more they learn to understand the why behind what we're doing, but also the execution of what we're doing. But if they're not part of the conversation, that isn't going to happen.
Mm.
So we've got to get them in the conversations, even if they're just sitting there listening. They don't even have to be saying much. Just part of the conversation. So, Paul, proximity.
Can I?
So go ahead.
Now, can I ask a question just on that before you get
Yeah.
to Paul's proximity thing? It's just because that, I guess our goal is growing people and taking that kind of responsibility, but there will always be leaders and followers. Am I right if I say that? So there will be, you can't expect that in a group, I mean, in a group is always going to have a leader. You want to develop other leaders, but some people are never going to get to that place where they fully take that responsibility. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Am I right if I say that?
Absolutely.
So you can't get away. You will always have people that feel more responsible than others for what's happening.
Yep, absolutely. But even with the others that are less motivated, less confident, less visionary, less entrepreneurial, that are less that, God still calls them to have some responsibility for the family. So again, I'm going to use my kids as an example. Okay. I've got two daughters that are in similar age to each other. Okay. And they're different in beautiful ways. Okay. But one of them is just more motivated. She just takes more initiative. She sees things that need to be cleaned up or that sooner. So that's a difference in personality and gifting. So, but with the other one, there's still the expectation that she's gonna help, not any less, just in a different way. Does that make sense, Thomas?
Yeah.
So they're both going to take responsibility for the good of the family and the work of the family, just but in different ways. But the one doesn't need to be asked very much.
Yeah.
She just takes initiative. She sees things. Yeah. She's an initiator. The other one needs to be asked.
Yeah.
The other one needs to be given more clear direction. Like, here's what I want you to do, when I want you to do it, how I want you to do it.
Yeah.
and then she gladly goes and does it.
Yeah.
There's not a resistance to doing it. She just doesn't see things in the same way. She doesn't have the same initiative. She doesn't have any less desire to be part of what needs to be done. So you're gonna have the same thing in your group or your church, Thomas. You're gonna have some that you talk about things one time and they get it, then they initiate, then they execute. You're gonna have others that 5 years from now still need to be told.
Yeah.
Still need to be reminded, still need to be encouraged. Here's what we're doing, everybody. Here's when we're doing it on Saturday afternoon. Here's how we're doing it on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, yeah, great point. Personality, gifting, maturity,
All plays.
how they grew up, their family,
Yeah.
their family dynamic. Like their parents didn't have this expectation on them.
Yeah.
For the first 20 years of their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this family over here had a very different set of expectations. So you get a different type of person coming out of that different parenting dynamic. So, so yeah. So some you're going to talk once or twice with. They're going to get it. They're going to go do it, initiate it, execute it. Others going to need to be reminded, encouraged month after month. So, but again, with those that need to be encouraged more, that doesn't mean the expectation is any lower. So hear that. The expectation is for everybody to be good family, to be responsible, to be faithful, to be obedient. We're not talking about lowering expectations. We're just talking about how we're getting them to follow through on expectations.
Yeah.
So, great question. Okay, back to you, Paul. Proximity. Well, you know from what it says there, what you've heard me say, proximity matters. So it's something we're talking about, something we're working on. It gets better over time because you will get more people living in more places, going to school in more over time. So over time, there will be more and more overlap of relationship. But in the early stages, really just being creative. I don't know how else to say it. You got to be more creative. You got to work harder to make it happen. So those guys living 22 Ks away, the question would be sometimes, would it be possible to do something closer to them? Right now, if everything's happening close to us over here, we can do some of that, but we've got to find ways to get at least to them or halfway to them so that travel time is reasonable and sustainable. And that's a big consideration in big cities. We've got to say, where are we living life together? Where are those spaces that are reasonable and sustainable? I work with a church in Bucharest, Romania. Man, in the beginning, they had the same question, and it was brutal. Big city, 4 million people, public transportation is not good. The city is packed, like the density. So traffic is like crazy certain times of the day on certain part, so they really, again, I had to work hard at this in the beginning, be creative about this in the beginning, say, where can we be doing things as a community in our city that are reasonable and sustainable so that the travel time is not restrictive. Whether they're taking the bus in Bucharest, the underground, where is traffic, bad, so that we can avoid that at least sometimes. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but part of it's just having a conversation with people and say, what are our options, guys? We're going to do some things here because there's benefits in doing some things here, but where, when, how could we do some other things in some other spaces in the season until we get more people that have tighter proximity built in.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Just also realizing that it is an early problem, particularly as we get more people in Nelspruit, they will form a mission community on their own, and then it's a lot easier.
Good.
I've also just the diversity. I've felt that I almost need to focus on different groups rather than try and keep the whole group together. Just a domestic worker and a CEO sit comfortably on a Sunday, but the DNA and the discipleship needs are very different. So
good. Yep. Again, especially in the early days, when you have fewer and some of those differences are so big, it's going to need a more customized. It's going to need a more customized approach.
Yeah.
And I like what you said. Yeah. So again, Bucharest, as an example, in the early days, they said, man, we've got one family way out there, like 50 minutes away. Like, wow, that's hard. That's not ideal. What can you do? How can you make the best of it right now until there's a second couple or a second student, or, so they've got a bit more, so they could at least start a DNA relationship out there. They're still going to have to drive in for the next 6 to 9 months because there's no other option most of the time. So we're just going to have to make that commitment. For the next 9 months, they're going to drive here on Sundays, and we're going to drive out there on Friday nights. Not ideal, but we're going to make that commitment for the next 9 months. And we're going to pray, and we're going to work towards seeing 2 other students, 2 other families join them somewhere out there. So that then they need to travel here less frequently, and we need to travel there less frequently, because they'll be able to do more on their own out there. So man, over time, I can tell you so many stories. I keep using this Bucharest example because it's a great example of where proximity was hard in the beginning. But then some years later, being creative, being intentional, lots of that was solved. Lots of that was solved. And people, one of the cool things started happening, people started making different decisions even about where they lived.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we need our landlord is, kind of pushing us out of our apartment. So we're looking for a new place to live. Where do you think we should do that? Well, how about close to somebody you could be living in community with? Yes. So I can tell you many housing decisions were made that way. And when that happens over some years, you get people properly clustering in the city, but not clustering for the sake of comfort, clustering for the sake of mission. Does that make sense? Many examples. Or people start making different decisions about where they're going to shop or where they're going to recreate. It's like, yeah, we used to do that 30 minutes that direction, but we realized that if we started doing it over here, kind of between some of us, going to that park or that store or that, we realized that we could get a lot more overlap of relationship here. So just making different decisions about where they eat, where they shop, where they live, helps change all that. But you got to take it seriously. It's probably the biggest practical problem or it's one of the biggest practical problems that I hear with churches I work with. The lack of proximity and the challenges it creates because people just cannot live much life together.
Yeah.
The distance between them is prohibitive. The distance between them prohibits how frequently they can meet, how often they can get a meal together, how often they can cross-pollinate relationships with non-Christian neighbors, how often they can meet at a park together, something as simple as that. And without some proximity, it's gonna be challenging. So, other thoughts, questions, meals, small children. That's usually a big one.
Mm.
How do we do life like this in community on mission with small children?
Well, maybe let me pick up on that. Just no one's talking, so so because of the small kids, we've done the man-woman DNA every second week. But we're finding that it's taking really long time to get going, again, because it's new for everyone. And in our context, obviously, it's in relationships are all new. And so I'm finding myself a little bit frustrated because I don't feel that we're making progress in terms of even trying to transfer a sense of the culture that we're wanting to inculcate or anything like that. Because like last week, we said goodbye to the Bantams. They went back to Sao Paulo to Brazil for 3 months. And so I canceled our men's DNA group. So then it's suddenly a month before we've seen each other. And you don't make much headway in seeing each other once a month sort of thing. So how do you guys in the early stages do it?
Yeah. So yeah, don't cancel.
Well, except when your missionaries are going overseas.
So reschedule.
Yeah.
And then I mean, yeah, with him out of it, meet face to face with your other two and pull him in on Zoom.
Yeah.
Figure out a time that could work so that you pull him in on Zoom and he can listen in. But somebody gets sick, somebody has to stay late at work. It's like, man, I don't think we're going to be able to do DNA guys. When can we reschedule? Don't say let's cancel until a month from now. Or sometimes, because we do it in the evening after 8 p.m., sometimes guys will just say, hey, honestly, everybody, super tired, hard day at work. I don't have the energy to go 90 minutes with you guys. So let's at least, though, do like a 20-minute check-in. Let's get on a call, 20 minutes, quick catch up with how everybody's doing and, one or two things to pray for. So again, don't cancel, adjust, reschedule, do it shorter. Say we're not able to do Wednesday night or Thursday night this week. Could you guys, could we check in for 30 minutes on Saturday morning? Or could we check in for 30 minutes on Sunday evening? And just do a virtual check-in, which keeps, again, Paul, keeps the relationship going, keeps you engaged in what's going on in everybody's lives, gives you a couple specific things to pray for. So.
Okay. Cool.
Great question. I'll just tell you one story about small children since nobody's asking. Okay, we're doing the story of God, as I told you about Sunday night. So got a fair number of children. So we had to be creative about feeding them before the story of God discussion. So everybody worked together though to get all the kids food on their plates. And then we had them eating in 2 or 3 different spaces. But then afterwards, we got a range of ages. So we had the older ones, 11-year-old, 2 12-year-olds, usually a couple older teenagers. We actually have them join us for that discussion time. And it was really cool. They actually had some great comments. So it wasn't just, hey, adults talk, kids stay silent. It's like, hey, kids, what do you think? What do you think about that part of the story? When God did that to Israel and that thing happened, what do you think about that? Had some great comments from our younger ones. Oh yeah, a 12-year-old non-Christian is part of it. So really cool to see that dynamic going on. But then we had a few younger ones that we needed to take care of in another room. So one of the adults that Sunday just basically had to sacrifice and share responsibility and say, I'm going to take care of those younger kids over here during that hour so the rest of you can have an undistracted conversation. They didn't get to be part of the conversation, but they served the family in that way by taking responsibility for those younger kids during that hour. And next time, somebody else will do it. And the next time, somebody else will do it. So we will ask a different adult each time to take responsibility for the younger kids so that they can be well cared for over there in that other room, so that the adults can have an undistracted conversation or whatever their, undistracted prayer or undistracted whatever's going on. So it's just another example of sharing responsibility, taking turns, being good family. Paul, you do it this week. Brian will do it next time. So it's just being good family, sharing responsibility. And back to your point, Thomas, some people are going to need to be asked to do that. So I can tell you right now, 2 Sundays from now, when we do it again, I can already see it, situation. I can already see that Shannon, another one of the moms, she's a quiet introvert. She will not volunteer to do it. She will need to be asked. But then she'll be excited to do it. But she'll need to be asked. She's not going to take that initiative on her own. She's not going to volunteer. She will need to be asked to take care of the kids in the other room.
Yeah.
But then it'll be great for her. It'll actually be a great growth step for her.
Yeah.
Take that responsibility to be good family in that way. But she's going to need to be asked. And this last Sunday, my wife and I took primary responsibility for the food. We had some lasagna, we had some bread, we had some salad. We took responsibility for most of it. 2 weeks from now, we're going to have to ask somebody. Somebody might volunteer, but I'm probably not. Probably not. So we're going to have to say, hey, Chadwick and Jenica, this other family, could you guys, take primary responsibility for the food for Sunday night?
Yeah.
And they're new to the group. And they're less mature, less experienced Christians than Tom and Shannon. And so this is going to be a good growth step for them. I don't think they've hosted a lot of things like this. I don't think they've provided food for a lot of situations like this. So this is going to be a good growth step for them. So we will ask them, we will tell them how much they need to bring. We will tell them what to bring that's appropriate for, you know, adults and children. So we'll talk through all the details with them, but then, you know, have them do it.
They need to do it.
But we're gonna have to hold their hands.
Mm.
So always requires a lot of hand holding. So part of discipleship, part of discipling younger believers or developing some of your younger leaders.
Mm. I think a big mistake that I make, and Brian maybe said, but you think, okay, so you want people to take initiative, but people, there's a lot of reasons why they don't, you know, and just being more deliberate in asking them and saying, listen, we have you calling us together next week, you know, because I think. And in a way, it is easier just to take that responsibility and then to moan because you have to take that responsibility every time. But if you, if you do not, it's training and sort of there's a lot of fears maybe in their heart, or they think they can't do it, or they've seen you do it and they think they can never do it like you did it. But yeah.
Very well stated. Very well stated. So yes, sometimes it would be faster to do it ourselves, but that's not developing them. Sometimes it would we would do a better job, but that's not developing them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of stuff's going on all the time. And Thomas, we need to learn to ask. We need to learn to ask in a way that is like life-giving and positive, not like shaming or guilting or pressuring.
Yeah.
There's a way to ask that is empowering.
Yeah.
And there's a way to ask that is not, that is crushing.
And threatening,
so
yeah.
We need to learn to ask in an empowering way that says, man, hey, Tom and Shannon, you guys have been around, you know, we need food to happen, you know, next Sunday. It would be really helpful if you guys did this and this. They were asked in a very honoring way, in a very respectful way, in a very positive way. And I mean, most people, most of the time are going to, they're going to appreciate that and they're going to respond to that, you know, in a positive way. So yeah, how you ask, if you just kind of pressure, shame, guilt, like that's not developing people. That's not respecting, honoring people. So, you know, it's basically helping people feel like they're part of the team.
Yeah.
They're an important part of the team. Their contribution matters. The family functions better when they're involved, engaged, helping. That's the kind of culture we've got to create in our groups.
Yeah.
So, hey, really good stuff. I told you in the email, this is our last session as part of this season, but it seems like I've gotten feedback from some are definitely wanting to continue. So that's what we will do. My idea initially, and we can adjust along the way also, I've got some other tools I think would be helpful to discuss, but I think we'll split the time in the future where we'll do just half the time with some new thoughts, some new content, you know, keeping it fresh, and half the time getting stories from, your side. Say, what are you doing? What are you learning? How are you growing? What are some of the struggles? So, so maybe splitting the time 50-50 like that seems like it might be really helpful for people. So that's what I've already heard from some. So, and again, we can get into it and even adjust it further along the way in the new year. But my idea is to jump back in, take a couple months off, December, January, jump back in February, if that sounds good. But I also wanted to offer in January, if you want to get on an individual call with your churches, I will, be available for that. So hopefully some others are going to listen to the, video of this and be aware of that. But I'll send that out in an email, basically some new tools, 50-50 discussion next year. We'll stick with the same basic time, same basic day, but then make available individualized calls in January. If you want to get on, basically I would want to get on with some of your extended team.
Mm.
So that would be the idea. So you guys in January, if you want to do that, and those of you that are watching the video, if you want to do that in January, shoot me a time, a date, even some of the talking points that would be helpful for you and your team.
Mm.
And then we'll keep journeying in 2022. So thankful we get to do this. I appreciate you guys. Love interacting. Love interacting with you guys. So love to keep doing it in 2022. So that's all I've got. Any final thoughts, comments from you before we sign off? All good?
Thanks for your time, Todd, and the effort you put into this. We appreciate it.
Mm.
Great.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Great. Okay, let me pray us off. Father, thanks. Thanks for my brothers and sisters there. Pray that you would help them to keep going, persevere, to, as your word says, to not grow weary in doing good. I pray that they would commit their lives to doing good for you, for your glory. You've placed all of them in strategic places to love people and serve people and bring your kingdom to their neighborhoods and their workplaces and their schools. And so pray that you would give them motivation for that, protection for that, strength for that, and more workers. Pray that pray for more helpers. Your word says that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So we believe that's true there also, that there's a plentiful harvest. You're wanting to redeem. So I pray that you would send even more helpers to their churches, to their ministries, to their small groups, home groups. So, Father, thanks for loving us so well. We love you. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
We'll be in touch. Hope to hear from you. Maybe see you in January, if not February.
Good. Have a good break. Have a good Christmas, everyone.
Yes, coming fast.
Cheers.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.